Okay, hi, good evening. My name is Sheena, and thank you, Alex. And wow, I'm hungry now, so really, thank you, Alex. But I'm a theater maker, and I is one of the things that I do. I'm a director, a writer, sometimes a performer. But today, what I'm going to share with you is my experience of running my company, my theater company, which is called the Patchworks Ensemble. And I was hoping, I'm just going to take my watch out so I know about time because I talk a lot. So there we go. Now I got that. So I thought, I was thinking about this and how I would begin this and what would be the first thing that I wanted to say because I wanted it to be like impactful or something. And the only thing I could think about was the first time that I went to the theater when I was in school. So I went to this school, this ICSE school, that really insisted every year that we went on these theater trips. And so we'd be taken to these big theaters where we would watch shows like Oliver Twist or Mary Poppins or Romeo and Juliet. And I really hated it. I found that there was something about going to the theater that was really like, are you kidding me? What is this? Who are these people? Who speaks like this? Everything was very like proper. Won't you take a cup of coffee? And I said that doesn't make sense. And so for me, the world that I knew growing up was the world of comic books and cartoons and that kind of stuff. And that was the stuff that got me excited. And I never thought that the theater would be a place that I would land up or that I would run a theater company. That was never part of my plan growing up. But then when I got to college and I finished my BA, I was very keen on going abroad to study. And I was very clear that I wanted to do a master's and I wanted to come back and I wanted to be a professor. And obviously, I got into one master's program, but it was too expensive and there was no way I could afford it. And I didn't get any funding. And the only place that I did land up getting funding was at the London International School of Performing Arts. And I thought to myself, I was like, physical theater, the school is just programmed, like this school is not even a school for actors. It's very specifically a school for people who want to make theater. Do I want to do this? But I had gotten funding for some, I don't even know why they gave me funding, but they did. So I was like, fine, let's do it. And 2 weeks into being in that school, it just all clicked. And I knew that this is what, no matter how hard, how tedious it would be, this is what I wanted to do, and that I didn't know it, but this was the school that was made for me. So I feel like it's a little bit important to talk about my school. It's the pedagogy, the pedagogical philosophy comes from a theater maker from Paris whose name was Jacques Lecoq, and he had a very simple philosophy. His philosophy was everything moves. Now that sounds really bizarre. Like what does that mean? Everything moves, but it's true. Everything around us has a story, has something to say. And if we just peel away those layers, then we can experience that. And that's what I think, that's what my dream, that's what my hope is. That's what I aspire to do. Is that everything, that there's nothing that's too small and there's nothing that's too big. There are no questions too irrelevant and no questions too powerful. Everything has something to say, and as an artist, my hope and what I want to do with my process is just try to explore that. And as a theater director, to share my explorations with you. So I finished my schooling and I came back very, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I was very lucky to meet another theater maker whose name is Pooja Sarup, and she had gone through a very similar learning process and a very similar learning journey. And so we decided to come together and start a theater company, which we called the Patchworks Ensemble. Now, the name name. I also, like Alex was talking about naming. Naming was also quite important to us, and the name Patchworks, because the nature of our company is that it's the work that we create is owned by everybody. It is a patchwork. It's and so it's not something that's very neat. And when you look at it, you won't see one composite image, but you will see the parts very, very obviously. And ensemble just comes from the word that we as a theater company, we cannot function with the people who come on board and work with us. Everybody, from the person who, in the morning when you get into a theater, when you get into G5A early in the morning, the person who's there to rig your lights, that person, if they don't exist, then your show's not happening. If your actor doesn't exist, my work doesn't exist. So that's why ensemble was also such an important part of the naming process. So now, our shows, this is a picture from the first show that we ever created called Ila. Our shows, we are a devised theater company. So what does that mean? Well, what it essentially means is that we don't have a script. Going into the rehearsal process, there is no script. We have source material. And based on that source material, we construct our show. So Ila, for example, Pooja was reading the book, The Pregnant King by Devdutt Patnaik. And in that book, there is a very small myth, a lesser known myth about a king called Ila, who one day went wandering into a forest and he got cursed by Shiv and Parvati, and he was transformed into a woman. So Ila finds Shiv and Parvati and says, listen, this won't do. I'm a king. I have to be a man. And Parvati says, and this I think is something that's just so wonderful about living in India, is this idea of jugaad. Parvati says, I'm really sorry, nothing can be done, but what we can't change you back into a man. That won't happen. But what we can do is we can put a little bit of like a twist to it. So your gender will be in accordance to the moon. So when the moon is full, you will be all man, and when it's a new moon, you'll be all woman. And you will go through the phases. And so Ila also is like I love our Indian myths, is just like, okay, fine, sure. I guess that's what I have to do now. So he goes through this entire, he, she, they go through the entire spectrum of gender. And both Pooja and I also have this really weird love affair with the Mumbai trains. We love the trains, and we're always talking about things that have happened on the Mumbai local. And our trains, so the ladies' compartment, there's the one dabba that between 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning becomes general. So so for a better part of the day, it's only women who can enter that compartment. But for a certain time, it becomes general and anybody can enter. So there's that kind of like gender cycle even on our trains. So we were like, fine, let's put the two together. So our show is essentially a group of women and one man who sells wares on the train, who are traveling from Churchgate to Bhayandar. And while they're taking that journey, they're telling each other the story about Ila. So that was the inspiration for our first show. Our second show that we did is called The Gentleman's Club. And The Gentleman's Club is essentially a show about drag kings. Now, the first time I saw a drag king performance was when I was in London. And again, completely blew my mind. Most of us have seen drag queens, we're familiar with it, but the idea of a woman dressing up to heightened states of masculinity and celebrating masculinity was something that was very exciting for us. So our second show is called The Gentleman's Club. And now the thing is that, like I mentioned that story right in the beginning about the theater that I saw as a child just felt so alien to me. That is something that is a non-negotiable for the work that I do today, is that it has to come, it cannot exist in a void. It has to come from a world that we collectively experience. So that's why when we set out to create the Gentleman's Club, we were thinking, who would our drag kings be? And we were collaborating with this wonderful writer. His name is Vikram Fukan. And he looked at Pooja and he said, you've got Kapoor family vibes. And he said, Shami Kapoor. And we were like, Shami Kapoor, yeah, that's interesting. And then we started doing all of this research on Shami Kapoor and the kind of hero that he was and the kind of masculinity that he portrays. And there was something really exciting about that golden era of Bollywood cinema. And so that's how it came. And so all our drag kings, we have, so this Shami, so that's Shami Kapoor who's having an argument with another drag king. And this actress, developed her own king persona. And that was based on this, she's Bengali and she's very familiar with these kind of, she's been part of many evenings in her house growing up in Calcutta where there would be all these men who would just be talking. And they would just like non-stop be talking about politics and this and that. And she was like, these men used to fascinate me. These men who could speak with conviction about anything and everything. And so that's who she's based her king on. And so, sorry, I'm not going to skip forward. So then we had another performer who based her king on Sardar Harpal Singh. Because again, when she was growing up, she was a hockey player. And her coach was an incredible Sardar who always, no matter what, would be incredibly happy. So even if they lost really badly and they were out of the tournament, somebody was injured, 4 players didn't show up for practice today, he'd just be like, all right, no problem, we can do this. And so she created her character based on that. So this is how the actors in our rehearsal room bring in what they want to explore. And then as a director, as a facilitator of this process, it's my duty to channel that, to cut away and see what are the things that finally make the show. The thing about a devised show is that what you see is 30% of what actually was created in the rehearsal room. We are generating material after material. We're just generating a lot of material. And sometimes that material is incredible and really powerful, but it just doesn't fit into the larger narrative. So then you have to be okay to let that go. And sometimes that material is horrible. And we have to let it go. We don't have an option. So our third show that we created was a show called Fly By Night. And this one also, it was one of those weird things that happened. I was flipping through a magazine, Time magazine, and I came across this article about this thing that happens in Japan, and it's called Johatsu. And it translates into the evaporating people. And the moment I heard that, the evaporated people, I was hooked. It's like, there's something here. There's something so lyrical and beautiful about that. And essentially, it's about people who, of their own accord, decide to up and disappear from their lives. And that there is a whole system in place that lets them do that. So our third show, Fly By Night, is based on an article. And yeah, so and the thing about, so this is a picture from Ela, and I'm jumping a little, so please bear with me. The reason I put these 2 pictures back to back is, so if you see the set for Fly By Night was just these cardboard boxes. Now, there are 2 things. In case you don't know, theatre has no money. I don't know if you're aware of that. We have absolutely no money, no funds, no budget. So obviously that restricts us in terms of what we can do with our set design. But there's another thing about it as well, which is our shows, and this is my belief as well as a theatre maker, is that realism is portrayed on film. And film does it beautifully. And so as a theatre maker, I'm not even going to go there. That's not exciting. I'm not going to try and depict the realistic interior of a van of 3 people crowded in there, leaving their lives and going to start afresh somewhere. I'm not. But what I can do is I can give you something suggestive. I can give you something that maybe indicates that that's the world that we exist in. And then you as an audience imagine the rest. You imagine the rest of the van. You imagine it moving. You imagine whether it's a night and whether it's cold and whether it's rainy. And that's why I think theatre is also really, it's an art form that means a lot to me, because as an audience, you have to be an active audience. You are not passive. And theater demands that, and good theater, and are all my shows good, and every run, is it fantastic, and does it achieve it? No, obviously not. But the goal is that as a theater maker, I hope that I spark something in your imagination, and that I hope that you see something that just absolutely doesn't exist. You come into the G5A, you see a black box, but maybe, hopefully, 10 minutes into my show starting, you see a cabaret performance in the middle of some, obscure underground club in Bombay, hopefully. So that was the set design for Fly By Night. And so for Ela, as you can see, we set it on a train. And so how we worked with it was like, we were like, what'll show a train? How can we have a train? And then we were like, you know what? Nothing. Nothing that I put on stage is going to even remotely give you the feeling of what it means to travel in the Mumbai local. So let's just have people hold on to imaginary bars and these hooks, these handlebars, and that's what we did at the end. Our last show and our latest show is called Shikar, and this too it just came out of a conversation with this other writer. Her name is Shubhangi Swaroop. And Shubhangi mentioned that she was very interested in exploring the myth and the stories around chudels. And she said that one line, and both Pooja and myself were like, done. What's that about? So the idea of the chudel and what that means, it's used as an insult. And it's used, who is a chudel? Is a woman, I've been called a chudel because, a woman who gets angry, or a woman who is too demanding, or a woman who laughs a certain way. So we wanted to take that term, and then what if we were to claim that term? And so that's how we created our show, Shikar. And the process of creating Shikar also was, we had these characters, and then slowly around the characters, we built the world, which is this house that they lived in. And then we started looking for references of who are women from pop culture who have been called chudels. And one of them who repeatedly comes up is Rekha. Because of the life that she's lived and because of the choices. And I am a huge Rekha fan. So then what we did is we went back and looked at a lot of interviews of Rekha. And so if you see a lot of the makeup that the actresses have, obviously it's exaggerated here, is like 80s, 90s Rekha, where she used a lot of chrome and a lot of chrome makeup and a lot of glitter. This is just from Google searches and things that have been said and comments. Another comment that has come up is Shanaz Hussain. Now, this is a woman who created $1 billion empire, the first makeup entrepreneur that there was. And because now she doesn't look a certain way, she doesn't look and behave the way that you think a makeup beauty queen should be, there's some really horrible things that are said about her on the internet. And so then, of course, she became an inspiration for us. So this idea of robes and of a lot of print, that all came from Shehnaz Hussain. So we kind of worked from the outside in, where we created these characters. And then we put these characters in a world, and then we said, now there's someone who is out to destroy their world. And that was the starting point of our show. Now, Shikar is Shikar, Gentlemen's Club, Ela. These are all shows that, as we perform them, as we work on them and rehearse them over and over again, we are not afraid to change things. And so if you have seen the opening run of Ela, and then if you saw the last run of Ela that happened in Prithvi earlier this year, they were very different, the shows. In fact, the entire ending had changed. Likewise with Shikar. The show is still evolving. We've had 2 runs of it. And I think that's another great thing about the medium of theater, is that you're not bound by film. You make a film, it's edited, it's out, it's like, here, this is it. And then only on the screening or whatever does somebody notice something like, that happened. But with theater, we can constantly change, and we don't shy away from that. And we do change, and we do keep editing our shows. This is just a picture of the final. I really wanted to show these. These last two pictures for me were really important because this is our entire team for Shikar. And actually, a lot of the people who work who are performers as well on stage, double up and help us with our production. And so it is really, in that sense, the word ensemble does mean a lot. When I was thinking about my process and the kind of environment that I work in, or the kind of environment I want to create for people to work in, of course, I want it to be a place where it's all where creativity flows, and you feel inspired, and you feel ready, and you feel taken care of. But I also very much so wanted it to be a place where you could. So often in our work lives, we are forced to disconnect from our personal lives. And I think Bombay is brutal that way, where irrespective of what your parents are going through, or whether your partner is sick or whether you're sick, you have to show up to work. And that was something that was very important for Pooja and I, where we said our rehearsal rooms are not going to be that. So we do have check-in sessions with our actors, and we have check-in sessions with our production people. We take really long to develop our rehearsal schedules to make sure that things fit in. And that's why this is the last picture that I wanted to show, is that is one of the directors of the show Fly By Night, Rachel, and that's her child, Isa. And Isa was with us throughout the rehearsal process of Fly By Night. And it was like we would structure it according to when Isa needed to be fed, and when Rachel needed to take a break. And sure, we might have lost some time here and there, but that was really important to us, because that's the kind of environment that we wanted to create and sustain for artists to work in. I just want to end by saying one last thing, is that people constantly question theater and question my choice of working with the theater. And I think, Alex and I were talking about this earlier, and I really truly believe, and I might be naive and I might be delusional, but I really truly believe that there is something about the live art form, or the act of a play happening in front of you, that if it taps what it needs to tap, if it can come close to the nerve of what it is saying, that the experience it generates in the audience is unlike any other medium. Because it's happening right there. It's a living, breathing, palpable form of art. And if it can break away from just being here and reach you, then that experience that you as an audience member have, for me, nothing compares to that. And that is what I am perpetually chasing. Have I achieved it? I don't know. Will I achieve it? I don't know. But that's where my process is taking me. Thank you very much.